Somebody welcome him.
Well, this is year E of the ATSSB tryout music sequence, and so I will begin by playing first etude, and we'll talk some about it. Several problems. Number one is breathing. They are very long phrases. So I think right off the bat, you've got to make sure that you choose a tempo that is workable. Otherwise, the phrases are just too long to deal with. And like when you're nervous, like I am, and we all get nervous when we do auditions and things like that, we're always short of breath. No matter how much you think about breathing, no matter what you do to plan for it, if you're a little bit on the antsy side, it's going to affect both the way you breathe and the way your body handles the air that's in your lungs. So one of the things that you can do to help with that, which I didn't do just then, is to take several large breaths before you play. And so what that does is it helps to relax you. It loads your body, your bloodstream up with oxygen, so that number one, it has kind of a calming effect on your muscles and on your nerves. And number two, it will also sort of trick your body into thinking that you're not running out of air, or put it the other way, to let your body know that there's plenty of air in there. When you breathe normally, and if you're using up the oxygen in your blood quickly because the muscles are tense or because there's adrenaline flowing, the oxygen level will go down even though there's still air in your lungs and you feel like you need to take a breath. So one of the things that you can do to help with that is before you start playing, just sit there when you're in your chair. 3 or 4 of those. And you can hear in my voice already, my voice has a little bit more of a relaxed sound and that sort of thing. And by doing that, then you take one more breath of playing normally after a few of those. See if I can play a longer phrase after doing that. But breathing, you know, that I did run into, even though in a calm situation at home, I can't get through that phrase. I had to catch a breath 2 bars before the end of that first long phrase. So that was the end of the second measure on the second line. Let's see where that is. So right before that B there, second measure, the second line, I grabbed a quick breath. Did y'all hear that? And if you plan for it correctly, there's a way to grab a quick breath where it's just enough to get you through maybe another couple of bars. But what you do is you taper the last note of the note before your breath just a little bit, and then grab your breath quickly, not enough to make you comfortable, but just enough to get you, another measure or two, and then kind of ease back in without a heart attack. Sometimes we want to grab a quick breath and then we tense up and then we tone the next note real hard, and everybody goes, "Oh, he took a breath there." But if you kind of taper it on both ends, you could sneak a real quick breath in, and it's less noticeable. Things like that we want to try and do. Obviously, in a lyrical etude like this, one of the big issues is sound. So I've given you in your handouts, I've given you a diagram or a few diagrams that deal with embouchure and with sound, and the page mine's in color, but the page that has the circles and the ovals on the bottom to talk to you just a little bit about finding the center of your sound. When we play, say we play a G in the staff, there are a lot of different places that we can buzz, a lot of different places that we can put that note pitch-wise, and a lot of different things that we do with our embouchure and with our hair. And what we want to do is we want to find the center of the sound, like that circle there that I've got there on that first circle right there in the middle. So if we've got like this much space available to play, if we're playing and we buzz the G, put the pitch of the G exactly at the pitch that the instrument, the length of tubing wants to resonate, we've got resonance or overtones that are sounding on that note all the way around inside of that circle. And like the entire the entire overtone series, the bugle notes are sounding in that note that we play if we play it correctly. We don't hear them per se because our ears focus on the fundamental pitch. But if you've ever played with like a strobe tuner and you look and you see the note that you're tuning and the little black dial is standing still, but you can also see that some of the others are standing still as well. That instrument, that machine is hearing those overtones and showing you the pitch relation on those things. So that's a way that you can actually see that's happening. But what we want to do is make sure that we're centering the vibration that we put inside of this mouthpiece in such a way that those overtones are present in the sound. And when that happens, we've got a clear sound, or what we might call a bright sound, but we also have a dark sound or a warm sound at the same time. And that's what we're looking for in an etude like this, is we want resonance where you've got the clarity of the trumpet sound, but also the warmth and the middle, the dark part that projects. So I'm going to play a G, and I'm going to move up and down a little bit on this pitch, and I want you to hear what happens to the sound as I do that. That's a good way to help you to start to find the center of your pitch. Another thing that needs to happen with that is you need to make sure that your lips are riding on the air, not pressing into the air like that. It's just like when you talk and you squeeze your vocal cords together like that, and does that to your voice. The same thing happens when you're playing your trumpet. If your lips are a little bit too tight, or if they're pressing on the air rather than just opening up and letting the air respond with them or react with them, it changes the sound. So I can do the same thing. I can play that G and get it centered. If I can just kind of clamp down, just by squeezing the lips together.
So what I'm doing is when I inhale, I'm thinking oh, and you can hear it sounds like I'm in the middle of a yawn.
And if you can take your fingers and put them right there at the base of your throat, and all of us have a larynx or an apple. If you make like you're going to yawn, even girls have it, they're not as pronounced as they are in the guys, but if you go like you're going to yawn, you go.
Can you feel that little bump on your throat or
The larynx kind of move down just a little bit.
If you really,
I mean, not just to open your mouth down, but
really, like I'm in the trumpet clinic and I'm about to fall asleep because it's 3:30 in the afternoon, that kind of yawn, you know, if you can get that larynx down like that.
And can you feel it kind of
Moving down like that?
Yeah, like that. That's what we want to do. And that's, you know, when you yawn, your body your brain is telling your body, I need oxygen or we're going to pass out on the floor. And so it does everything it can to get you the most efficient breath possible. So that larynx goes down, the throat opens up, your teeth come up hard, your teeth come down, your back of your trompe drops down low, and air just rushes into your lungs. So that's obviously, you know, nature's way of getting the most efficient breath in, you know, in the best way possible. We want to mimic that when we play the trumpet, both when we take the air in and also when we push the air back out. So you take your breath, the larynx drops down.
And if we can keep that in sort of the same position, that way we have
the effect of nothing getting away into that air column until it reaches your lips. So if you're playing with your throat a little bit like this, and you're trying to hang in your mouth and your teeth like that, you're playing like that, guess what that's going to do to your trumpet sounds? The same thing that it did to my voice. Okay, and basically you're the instrument, and the trumpet takes what you do and what you put into it, and it amplifies it. Okay, so that's our job, is to think about getting a nice round air column going into the trumpet like that, getting everything out of the way so the lips can respond with it, making sure that the that we're putting into it is exactly the right frequency that this length of tubing wants to resonate, and then doing that for every note. It's simple, right? It's not, but that's kind of what we want to do with as far as the centered sound. So you can look at that. like I said before, we want to try and have an O or an aw sound. And remember that the trumpet can only amplify what you're putting into it, so try to keep your tongue down out of the way of that air column. Think the O or aw sound. Now, if you want to make an E sound, that's cool. You know, certain types of musical styles would call for a brighter, thinner kind of a sound. Do it on purpose if that's what you want to do. For this kind of stuff, for lyrical, vocal kind of music, we are going for a more round, beautiful, resonant O or aw sound. And you do that simply by using those vowel sounds when you play the instrument. So we talked about breathing. I want to talk just a little bit. There's another drawing on your sheets. The one of them that looks like it has kind of like a beaker, your two-phase breath. And I want to talk to you just briefly about that before we go on. The two-phased breath, I use that as an illustration to just describe the basic two areas where the air goes whenever you breathe. The first part of your breath I call phase one. That's when the air goes down into your belly. You take your breath, your belly goes out like this. Right? And that's where you get about 2/3 of your breath supply. And then the second part of the breath, phase two, happens up here. So after I pull down low, the diaphragm goes down, pushes against all these organs. Then take the second phase and it's like that. Okay, and that's where you fill up the top part of the lungs as well. You don't get as much air into the top part as you do the bottom part, but it's important that we breathe up here because when we do, it opens up all this air passage so that there's a clearer path for that air to get into your mouth and out into the room. A lot of times I'll see students breathe down low, and then they'll stay collapsed here. They play it, kind of get a sound that's coming out kind of like that. But when you breathe down low and up high, then you've got a bag that's like shaped like this, and the air can stay big all the way out. And then when you push the air out, the air comes from like the belt buckle or the lower abdominal area, like the belly button to the belt buckle, not the upper abdominals. Pushing from there just kind of lock up this area of the body that compresses the air, and it does that to your trumpet sound like it does to my voice. Whereas breathing down low and pushing from that part will keep the sound a lot more in that way. And you can try yourself, just go home and talk like a radio announcer, and talk like this and that sort of thing. Tense up your muscles and try to push the air from different areas, and you can see it'll do the same things to your ears. So just a couple of thoughts about the two-phase breath thing. Smooth lines. One of the things that I hear a lot when I'm hearing lyrical lines and slurred passages is where there's a different airflow for every note, and we want to try and avoid that. I like to think of air as fuel for the lips to buzz on. So whenever I'm playing things like this, I want it to be a steady flow of air, and the air doesn't know whether I'm changing notes with my fingers, whether I'm slurring, whether I'm staying on a steady note, or whether I'm tonguing for that matter. Air's job is to go like this. The air doesn't need to help my lips do their job. The air doesn't have to buzz. The air just has to provide fuel to buzzing. The air doesn't have to help my fingers do their job. All right? My fingers can take care of moving these valves all by themselves. But the air has to keep flowing for whatever I'm doing here and whatever I'm doing here to be able to make it work. So what I want to do is I want to try and set up a pattern of keeping the air steady. And ways to practice that, it's really hard to control it just by trying to control it. The ways you can do to practice it, it's really simple. It's stupid simple, but it works. You can just take your horn and hold your valves and go. And then do it on the horn. It's so easy, but doing that, you're training your body to use your valves, to think the pitch in your head, but to blow a steady flow of air. And after doing that, That's another thing that will kind of help keep you from putting like that, keep from pushing and pulling on individual notes. Not only does it help to keep your line smoother, it helps to keep your sound working better, it keeps your lips buzzing better, and it makes the music more interesting. The line always rising and falling. Any questions about that first etude? Okay, let's go on to the second one. Etude number 2. Martiale is, what's it sound like? March, right. So you want it to sound like a march. Good examples of marches can be found on YouTube. Go and listen to any of the great, DC service bands, the Army Band, the Marine Band, or whatever your favorite group is, and just, look up YouTube March Army Band and listen to some of the clips that they've got just to give you a style. Now, whenever I play this thing, I'll show you what I've got happening in my head. All right, so anyway, I'll try to play along with this. Gives you an idea of sort of what's going on inside of my head whenever I'm playing this thing. And if you can kind of use your imagination to come up with hearing the band, hear the drums, because you hear the steady beat and the personality of the march and the style and everything happening, it gives yourself like a feeling of a little bit more energy. It also helps with not only with the style, but it'll help with the rhythm, because you notice in the second line we've got those, look at all that stuff I got on the screen, sorry about that. In the second line, we've got those 2 beats of rest. Full screen. We've got those 2 beats of rest there in the second line. So I want to make sure that I don't rush those 2 beats of rest. It's so easy to do that. Silence, especially when we're a little bit nervous, silence seems like an eternity, so we tend to jump the gun a little bit. And your judges are going to sit there behind that screen, tapping their pencils on the desk or tapping their toes. They're going to be keeping up with the time like that, so make sure you are too. So I hear that band going, ding, ba-dum, ba-dum, bom, 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 crash, yum, ba-dum. So I want to try and have something happening in my head that's going to help me keep that time real steady in places like that. You like it? I had fun making that up. Okay. Squillante, that's another great marking. I think it said here, it says resonantly. That's a real polite way to put it. So what squillante really means is like brassy, shrill, I think is another translation of the word. but it's like a word that trumpet players really like to see. We can play it really loud and they want a brassy sound, but always within good taste. So play it loud with a lot of strength in the sound whenever you've got that, but don't go beyond the realms of of good taste and that sort of thing. So make it a nice, controlled, very brassy sound on that. And you notice right after the squillante, it's followed by a pianissimo. So that's another thing. We're expecting something real big after that, and suddenly you just drop down to nothing. And then another great big thing. So make a big deal out of the dynamic contrast in that, with squillante and also with the fortes and pianissimos. Another thing that happens whenever we've got like march style music is we tend to play it like this. Your music sounds really choppy. It's okay for a bar or two, but a whole like 3 or 4 lines or 6 or 8 lines, it starts to sound real choppy. It gets real old. So I like the idea of playing where the quarter notes are all the way through. Another thing too is if you're playing in a room like this, by the time the sound that I play gets to the back of the room, the notes that I think I'm playing this long, wind up sounding this long because the sound is dying away, and the sound dies away here, and then doesn't travel to the rest of the room. So what I want to do is make sure that the sound that I make has the same sound in the front, middle, and the back of the note, and then that same sound gets all the way to the back of it. So instead of tapering every single note, I like the idea of going to the end of the note. So the sound stays more consistent all the way through. Now, a lot of times, though, whenever we're playing longer notes, we start playing legato. So be real careful. If you're playing the longer notes that your sound can project, we're still going to play in the marcato, the march style, the accented style. So I like the term marcato tenuto. Marcato with the star, so we've got accented notes. They have real bold articulation, but a tenuto length. So it's not long and legato, and it's not accented and short. It's accented and long all the way through. Does that make sense? Can you hear the difference between the two styles? Do you like the longer note style better? Because you can hear that it projects better. And like whenever you're doing the tapers on every note, you've got a good sound at the beginning of the note and sort of a mediocre sound at the end of the note, and like a sound with no resonance on the end. And so your listeners, whenever you're hearing the notes doing that, I drew a little diagram, on your handout there, the little triangles, and you can see there that on the second page of that. That when you're playing with triangles like that, your ears sort of hear sort of the average of the good, the not so good, and the fading away sound. And so we get something, your listener hears something that's really not what you intended to send out there. So that's another reason for making sure that you keep things a little bit more on the longer side with that. Also, the vowel sound issue again. We talked about it on your tone, on the lyrical etude. It goes with articulation too. So one of the things that I hear with things like this also is ta, ta, ti, ta, ta, ti, ta. Or I hear, so that's with the vowel sound. So the 16 has a different sound than the quarter or the vowel. So we want to try and make sure that the vowel sound for all the different notes that we play, whether it's the staccato triplet eighth notes, whether it's the 16th notes, or whether the quarter notes, the vowel sound stays the same. So when we're practicing our air patterns or whatever we're going to practice sing, ta, 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 ta. And every note, not only does it have the same vowel sound on it, but it should also have the same consonant sound. So every note starts with a strong T, or a ta, 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 ta. A lot of times we'll get things like ta, ta, da, 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 da. How's the song go? It's like that da, 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 da. And if you play it like that, a lot of times we do play it like that, so we wind up with something like. Which it makes sense. I mean, that's how the song goes, but it's a totally different sound, right? A totally different style, totally different sound. It's kind of almost like sort of a jazzy or sort of a street version of this, what we want to be a very pompous, classical sounding march. So practice and make sure that every note has a T start at the beginning and that it has the same paw vowel sound in the middle. So we're going to practice going paw, paw, ta, 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 ta. Record yourself and listen to it. See what you hear coming back at you on the recordings. You hear da, 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 or ta, 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 ta. All right, and there was something, okay, rhythm is the other thing I wanted to mention with this. And the 16th note, the dotted 16th note is another thing that they're going to be listening for on your auditions, on real common. We all know this. We've heard it. We've been fussed at it for many times. I'm sure you have, just like I have. Is that 16th note winds up sounding like a trumpet. So instead of going D, dum, ba bum, bum, ba bum, it's D, da 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 da, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, da da da. So remember, keep reminding yourself that that 16th note is the fourth part of 4 16th notes. So it's D, da 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 dum, ba 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 bum, D, da 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 dum, da 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 dum. So make sure that it really is divided up, in parts of 4 instead of in parts of 3. You can even practice that. So practice dividing it up like that. Another thing you can do is, so I'm going to contradict myself, the word today, 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 today. That's another good way to help make sure you got that, but I'm using the D's on today, so I don't want you to do that. So don't use the consonant part of that, but do use the rhythm part of that to help you to find that dotted 8 16th. That 16th needs to be very snappy. When I was in high school, my band director, Don Hood, who passed away a couple of years ago, great man, well, he taught me that rhythm by saying, put the 16th on the beat. And that's wrong too, and he would say that, that's wrong too, but that's a lot closer to being right than it is than the other ways than playing second. So we go, and it's not right, but it's closer to being right than the other way is. And if that helps you just to get to where you can understand the difference between the triplet figure on the dotted figure or the real 16th note, that's a good help. Keep the triplet 8th notes very steady. Also, make sure you're not pecking at them. Be real careful that you don't take those staccatos too literally. So they need staccato. Staccato is a marking that means a crisp. It can mean short, and quite often does, but not necessarily. So what I like to do is think of creating an illusion of playing short without playing short and sounding pecky on things like that. So I'll point the tongue. I'll have a nice solid start on the tongue on the beginning of the note, but also make sure that there's enough going through the note, enough vowel sound going through the note where it doesn't sound too pecky. Staccato, by golly, but it doesn't sound good. No. So something like that, but with a sharper articulation. So it's finding the da 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 da. It's pointing the tongue enough where your da 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 is still there, but with a sharper or firmer in the beginning of the note will get you the sound of the staccato without it really being staccato, and it's like you create an illusion of staccato, so it's a staccato that has a better sound. So always, sound is moving air, sound is vowel, but the consonant has to be there to make the vowel, project the way you want to. Just like, if I talk to you like this, and whether you understand what I said, and I can talk to you like this when I'm just talking base hasting and one two, you understand. But when I'm talking to a room like that, I have to articulate more clearly, and I don't go home and talk to my family like this at the dinner table. It'd slap me in the face, but in a large group, you have to do that. It's the same with trumpet playing. Articulate more clearly, but make sure that there's follow through with your ear in everything you do, whether it's a slurred passage or whether it's trumpet. And I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about. There's more stuff that's written. Are there any questions? All right, then I guess we're done. If that's it. Thank you all for coming. Best wishes. Good luck with the audience.